Hope is on the edge of a lot of things. This is the last stop before you head up the Fraser Canyon or venture the Coquihalla. This place has been hit particularly hard by the overdose crisis. Last year, it had the highest per capita deaths in all of BC. In 2023, 11 people died in this community. While that might not seem like a very high number when thousands of people have died across the province, for a population of around 6,600, that's a lot of loss. It's nearly triple the BC average and about 50% greater than the rate in Vancouver. So we met up with some of the people working here to try to stop the deaths.
Hope was a logging town. My dad was a logger. We have some of that mentality of work is the work ethic. It's hard to break that from some of the old timers. Yeah. So some of the social issues aren't really socially acceptable to folks.
It's not okay to have those conversations out in public.
No.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be dealing with those types of things.
What does the overdose crisis look like in Hope?
25% of the population are transient. Hope is the hub of the province, so we have a lot of transient population coming through. Then we have those folks who are, using alone in their own homes, and then we have those who are street entrenched. So it's not, I can't just say it's this category of folk, it's a broad category. And it's not an easy subject for folks to wrap their heads around, saying that it's folks who are, out there working and they're recreationally using on the weekend. Folks don't want to hear that. They want to hear that, perhaps it's the street entrenched population.
If you live in one of the towns that dot the Fraser Canyon up along Highway 1 and you don't have a car and you're facing addiction, what do you do?
So we have our homeless outreach team. They go up the canyon. So we'll bring in harm reduction supplies. We will provide substance use services up along there. But again, it can be inconsistent because somebody is, you have an appointment today and they're not showing up for it for whatever reason. So I think that really it's an inconsistent system.
While outreach workers are making their way up the Fraser Canyon to towns like Boston Bar, doctors here say the people supplying the drugs are doing the same thing. And they suspect drugs are also coming in from an influx of people now working on the nearby pipeline. This PharmaSave is one place in town people can get safe alternatives to those more dangerous drugs. In terms of your experience as a pharmacist, do you see people coming in? Does this brush up against your work? People that are suffering from addiction and maybe suffering overdoses?
Oh yes, that's routine. People would come in sober in the morning. One of my musician friends come in sober in the morning, surprised me, said, look, I'm terribly addicted. I need to get off. He said, and I need to do something now. He says, and if I wait till 3 p.m, I'm already back into it. And then by 9, I'm plastered. And the whole cycle keeps on going. And so I talked to Dr. Grover here and I said, look, we need to get them right away. And so it was wonderful in a sense. And so he met with them over the phone. Once you start them on their drugs, it's much easier for them not to consume at 3 the same day because they're already getting some help. And that allows them the frame of mind and the ability to actually go to a subsequent appointment.
The Dr. Grover you heard mention there took us to the spot where people might come for some of those services. The addictions clinic right across from.
So whether you struggle with addictions, you have maternity, and you're pregnant, you would come here. If you struggle with addictions and you have hepatitis C, you would come here. The same place. And we created it in a place where it's accessible. A lot of our addictions patients, they don't have the ability to go to multiple clinics, multiple visits within a few weeks' time.
A 2022 report found that Indigenous people are more than 6 times as likely to be killed by toxic drugs than non-Indigenous people in BC.
Dealing with these patients now for several years that struggle with addictions, they need that culturally safe and that trauma-informed sort of approach because they really feel that they can connect and tell you everything. But what we've encouraged is anyone that's using substances, bring in your drugs here, get it checked, and we encourage the drug dealers and everyone to bring it in. Police don't get involved, it's sort of anonymous, and we've been doing this in the last 6 months. I know the numbers don't show it in reality, but the numbers would be a lot worse. We encourage our vulnerable people to make art that, find what their passions are. This is an individual that unfortunately did pass away. He made this from scratch. So these are individuals that have passed away and have kept their art, and it's just sort of that connection. They were doing really well, but they had some bad moments. It was hard for him to access those subspecialty cares that would really kind of help him. And so that's what was really a spark for me to try to bring these sort of specialty care, subspecialists into Hope, because that's just going to allow for individuals like him to then access those services right here, and at the same time help with not just his addiction recovery, but his medical journey too, right? So.
People in Hope have done a lot to build up the resources here.
This is Dr. Beaumont. He's from Chilliwack. He does maternity care. Yep. And anytime if he has a concurrent patient that struggles with addiction, how quickly do you call me, Beaumont?
Same day.
Yeah.
And make sure people have a way to get to them, even when the geography of this place makes that particularly challenging, and the issue can be pushed out of sight.
I think so often when we think of the overdose crisis in British Columbia, people's minds goes to downtown East Side. What do you want people elsewhere in the province to know about what the situation looks like in Hope and in the surrounding communities?
Addiction is everywhere. It's whether it's playing out on the streets or it's playing out in people's homes, it's everywhere. If we can suspend our judgment and our criticism, we can show compassion, perhaps those numbers will start to come down.
Michelle Ghoussoub, CBC News, Hope.